How has the Russia-Ukraine conflict impacted global markets? Russia and Ukraine were the world's first and fifth largest wheat exporting countries in 2021, according to the World Population Review. Our group conducted a study to examine the effects of this conflict on the prices of agricultural products in countries dependent on Ukraine wheat exports. Our visualizations and data analysis show evidence suggesting a correlation between the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the Black Sea Grain Initiative on the exports of Ukraine grain and the domestic prices of dependent countries. Our analysis covers trade and price changes across these countries. We took an exploratory, creative approach because many countries that heavily rely on Ukrainian agricultural products do not have transparent, clear data going back many years. We'll go through a quick overview of our presentation. First, we'll look at some related works. We'll then look at how we collected our data. We'll go over analysis of the Ukraine exports and price volatility. And then we'll look at retail product prices in countries dependent on Ukraine wheat exports. And lastly, we'll look at some conclusions. Starting it off, we will look at some related works. Related works have discussed food security and the impact of Russia-Ukraine conflict on global markets. Source one used a simulation scenario to look at the effect of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on the prices of various products for specific countries. The second source estimated the effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on agricultural products for developing countries that rely on grain imports from Ukraine. They estimated an increase of 3 to 18% for products in those countries. Lastly, the third source discussed the change of price indices for food from 2010 to 2023. They noted an increase following the invasion and a decrease with the Black Sea Grain Initiative. From looking at works similar in concept to ours, we were inspired to look at a wider range of years to assess agricultural product prices for specific countries reliant on Ukrainian exports and compare our findings to the analyses of and estimates of these studies. However, due to data limitations, we adjusted our focus to look at price volatility using export data, as well as looking at retail price data for countries dependent on Ukrainian wheat during the full-scale invasion and the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
The data we used for this project came from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations Food Price Monitoring and Analysis Tool, FPMA, and we also used data from the BACI, which provides data on imports and exports for over 200 countries at the product level. We chose the countries Bangladesh, Egypt, Indonesia, Libya, and Pakistan because they were identified in our research to be the most dependent on Ukraine by the BACI.
So we'll focus on our analysis of Ukraine exports and domestic price volatility of dependent nation states and nations. We first did a comparison of the average yearly quantity of our wheat imports from Ukraine pre and post invasion, choosing about 25 different countries, which seem to be the most dependent on Ukrainian wheat exports. We sorted the pre-invasion average quantity to validate who the top importers of Ukrainian wheat were before the invasion. So you see these 25 countries. It's been converted to log scale just so it's a bit easier to see the difference pre and post invasion averages for how much wheat was imported. Otherwise, you would see massive swings per country in this graph. Each country is individualized, differing the amount of wheat imported from Ukraine being so. That's just explained that. But I'll move on to our comparison of the monthly wheat price volatility we analyzed. So for this, you'll see the price volatility. It's the standard deviation of monthly percentage change pre and post invasion. We zoom in on a few of the countries: Egypt, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Bangladesh being our control. Um, so for Pakistan specifically, we've got a 0.2 percentage change in the volatility between Pre-invasion and post-invasion, you'll see that's pretty statistically significant. Um, and India and Egypt's also. And this, you'll see that this, in the next slide, you'll see that this correlates for most of the countries on the list. So here's our 2-month rolling average of wheat price volatility. And we take each country's data going back as far as it goes. So we have the most historical data available to us. Um, these were the most important countries we chose just because they seem to be the most dependent on Ukraine for its wheat imports prior to. And you'll see post-invasion after the red dashed line how much of an effect that had on domestic prices for each of the countries. Pakistan has a really large swing at the end. That's outside the scope for this, we believe, because uh, we think we found that pretty recently they had a prediction for lower wheat yields as they were trying to ramp up their domestic wheat production.
Now we're going to look at the analysis of retail product prices in countries dependent on Ukrainian wheat exports. So here you see a maximum normalized chart of the importation of Ukrainian wheat. And below, you're going to see a chart going through the domestic prices of wheat by month. It's small, but you'll also see horizontal dotted lines marking the full-scale invasion, and then the enactment and the pausing of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Not only is wheat a staple crop, but the Russia-Ukrainian conflict resulted in imposing sanctions on the finance and energy sector, which reduces the supply and hence surge in global price. And then here you're going to see the similar data. So you can see in 2020 and 2021, which is right before the invasion, the imports are a lot higher, and then you'll see them kind of taper off.
Here in this top table, we see the quantitative representation of what we've examined in these import plots, where all 5 countries examined show significant decreases in grain imports from Ukraine, an average of 73% decrease over all 5 of them, with only Bangladesh being under 50% decrease. On this bottom plot, we see the Pearson correlations and p-values associated with them, indicating their significance. And essentially, we can draw a conclusion from either a loss of significance outside of a certain time period or a correlational change. In the Bangladesh case, we see a loss in significance. Okay, no. Okay, in the Egypt case, we see during the war significance and a correlational change. So there's significance in both periods, and the correlation notably changes, indicating an effect of the war. And during the Black Sea Grain Initiative time period, we see a complete breakdown in the relationship between grain and rice prices. Rice was chosen as the control here, as Ukraine doesn't export any significant quantity of rice, and we had data on all 5 of these countries for their rice prices. In the Indonesia case, through both the war and the Black Sea Grain Initiative, there's a gain in significance and a created relationship indicated, but this is likely due to external factors, due to the existence of a change in relationship in both cases. In the Libya case, we see a correlational change in the war period versus outside of the war period between these two product prices. And in the Black Sea Grain Initiative period, you see a complete breakdown in the relationship between these two, showing likely a great effect of the Black Sea Grain Initiative on wheat prices and not on rice prices. Egypt and Libya illustrate this Black Sea Grain Initiative's complete breaking of the relationship between rice and wheat prices, which is unsurprising due to their geographical nearness to Ukraine and both of their dependence on Ukrainian wheat. This is just a line plot to visualize one of these Mediterranean nations. Prices of both wheat and rice in the period that we're looking at from 2020 to 2025, where you can see the invasion beginning, the Black Sea Grain Initiative's time of effect, and a brief pause when Russia pulled out of the deal for 3 days in October of 2022. Our analysis demonstrates that the Ukraine war and the subsequent Black Sea Grain Initiative significantly impacted global wheat prices, with measurable effects, especially in those Mediterranean nations that are dependent on Ukrainian grain. Due to challenges in data availability and quality, including gaps and inconsistencies, we were limited, especially in the war period, due to a limited time period of exploring the effects.